Rodney King's story is one of tragedy, resilience, and the long-lasting impact of police brutality on American society. His brutal beating by Los Angeles police officers in 1991 and the subsequent acquittal of the officers sparked one of the most destructive riots in U.S. history. However, his life before and after this event was equally complex, marked by struggles with addiction, efforts at redemption, and an ongoing search for peace. Below is a detailed account of Rodney King's life, covering his early years, the infamous beating, the legal battles, the 1992 LA riots, and his later years until his untimely death in 2012. Early life and background. Rodney Glenn King was born on April 2, 1965, in Sacramento, California. He was raised in a working-class family, and his father, Ronald King, was an alcoholic who passed away at a young age. Rodney and his siblings grew up facing financial difficulties, and he had brushes with the law from an early age. Despite these struggles, he worked various jobs and tried to provide for his family. King's life took a turn in 1989 when he was convicted of robbing a convenience store in Monterey Park, California. Armed with an iron bar, he stole $200 and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. After serving his time, he was released on parole in December 1990 and attempted to rebuild his life. The 1991 beating and public outrage. On March 3, 1991, Rodney King's name became infamous after a high-speed chase with the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, ended in a brutal beating. He and 2 passengers were driving in the San Fernando Valley when California Highway patrol officers attempted to pull him over for speeding. King, fearing he would violate his parole, fled at speeds reaching 110 miles per hour. The chase lasted for several minutes before King finally stopped in the Lake View Terrace neighborhood. At that point, LAPD officers, including Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, Theodore Briceño, and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, took control of the scene. What happened next was recorded by a bystander, George Holliday, using his camcorder. The video, which would later be broadcast worldwide, showed the officers repeatedly striking King with batons and kicking him as he lay on the ground. The attack lasted over a minute, during which King was hit more than 50 times, suffering multiple fractures, physical and emotional damage. When the video was made public, it ignited nationwide outrage, particularly in Black communities, where police brutality was already a long-standing issue. The case became a symbol of systemic racism in law enforcement, and the trial of the officers was followed closely across the country. The trial and the 1992 LA riots. The 4 LAPD officers involved in King's beating were charged with excessive use of force. However, their trial was moved from Los Angeles to Simi Valley, a predominantly white suburb, where the jury consisted mostly of white individuals. On April 29, 1992, the verdict was announced. 3 of the officers were acquitted of all charges, while 1 officer had a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury. The acquittals sparked immediate and widespread outrage, particularly in Los Angeles. Within hours, protests turned into full-scale riots. Over the next 6 days, the city saw widespread looting, arson, and violent clashes between police and rioters. The National Guard, U.S. Army, and Marines were eventually called in to restore order. The riots resulted in over 60 deaths, thousands of injuries, and more than $1 billion in property damage. Amid the chaos, Rodney King made a public plea for peace, famously asking, "Can we all get along?" His words became an enduring phrase, but they did little to quell the violence in the moment. Civil rights case and financial settlement. The federal government stepped in after the riots, charging the officers with violating King's civil rights. In 1993, 2 of the officers, Kuhn and Powell, were found guilty and sentenced to 30 months in federal prison, while the other 2 were acquitted. King later sued the city of Los Angeles for damages and was awarded $3.8 million in a civil lawsuit. He used some of the money to start a hip-hop record label, but the business venture failed. He also invested in real estate, but continued to struggle with personal demons, including alcohol and drug abuse. Post-riots life and struggles. Despite the settlement money, King's life remained turbulent. He had a long history of substance abuse and was arrested multiple times for DUI and domestic disturbances. He entered rehabilitation programs but had difficulty staying sober. His struggle with addiction and the psychological scars from the beating took a severe toll on his personal life. King attempted to find peace by engaging in public speaking and advocating against police brutality. He also appeared on reality TV shows, including Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, where he openly discussed his battles with addiction. He expressed a desire to heal and help others, but continued to struggle. Death and legacy. On June 17, 2012, Rodney King was found dead at the bottom of his swimming pool in Rialto, California. His fiancée, Cynthia Kelly, discovered his body. An autopsy later revealed that he had drowned, and toxicology reports showed alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, and PCP in his system. His death was ruled accidental, though many saw it as a tragic end to a life marked by trauma and hardship. King's story remains a crucial part of American history, symbolizing the fight against police brutality and systemic racism. His beating and the riots that followed led to increased awareness and calls for reform in policing. Although issues of racial injustice in law enforcement persist, his case played a role in sparking debates that continue to this day. Conclusion. Rodney King lived a life shaped by a single, horrifying moment, but his struggles extended far beyond that event. He sought peace, but was haunted by addiction and the weight of his legacy. His story serves as a reminder of the deep flaws in the U.S. justice system and the long-lasting effects of trauma. Though his life ended in tragedy, his name remains synonymous with a movement for justice, equality, and the hope that society can learn from the past to build a better future.